Today's topic is
color psychology for D&D.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to
WAYPN.
I'm Cal.
And I'm Sunny.
Today we're going to be talking about color psychology and D&D alignment.
If this video gets really popular and you guys like it, we'll do one on classes.
D&D classes. We're not going to start doing economics programs. We're going to go over some absolute basics for both D&D and color psychology.
But if you don't know anything about color psychology, don't worry, we've got a video already ready for you, and that goes over all the colors and their psychologies and doesn't waste any of your time.
Color theory is more the how,
And color psychology is more the why and the what.
and may be known as other names like design language. Here is the absolute basics of color. Hue is,
The color of the color,
saturation is,
the vibrancy of the color,
values are,
how light or dark the color is by mixing black or white.
what is desaturation,
Desaturation is when you reduce the vibrancy of the color, making it less vibrant.
what is a tint,
A tint is when you mix white into a color, making it lighter.
what is a shade.
A shade is where you mix black into a color, making it darker.
D&D time, what is alignment?
Alignment is the moral compass of your character.
In other words, how they align themselves. Do they align themselves more with good
Or evil.
more with law
Or chaos.
Alright, let's get into the nitty-gritty.
Alignment.
In Dungeons and Dragons, alignment has a particular meaning. It's not evil as we broadly know it, meaning that somebody might be
In opposition to our values. In D&D, it's more correlated with demons and actual forces of evil. And it can also be applied to people who are selfish, doing things for their own personal gains.
good more looks towards maximizing the benefit for multiple people, not just selfish empowerment.
But the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
However, on the law-chaos spectrum, chaos might be considered a form of individualism.
Someone who is very proactive, who takes action and doesn't care for what other people think.
Or more specifically, not what other people think, but rather what society thinks.
Yes, they act outside of rules and regulations.
Now we've gone over that little bit with alignment. What colors do we align with alignment?
Haha. We associate blue with law, red with chaos, black with evil, and good with green. Now we will explain everything by alignment.
Lawful.
Blue is associated with lawful because of these factors. Blue is seen as a dependable, competent, and stable color.
Those are just blue's associations. What are its positive traits?
They are loyal, honest, and trustworthy.
But it does have negative traits.
Those would be sensitive, stubborn, and cold.
So why was blue chosen for law?
Well, it is exactly like how the traits we have talked about earlier, like trustworthiness, dependability, or even competence. But blue is also a very passive color. Someone who is lawful is someone who follows the rules to a T, and blue represents that.
So blue is associated with the law, not because of cultural reasons such as the boys in blue, but for blue-specific traits.
Yes, exactly. It's the feelings that blue gives. Blue has both positive and negative traits that align with the lawful concept. So, for example, it has sensitivity, stubbornness, and coldness as part of its negative traits. These are traits that show the law because the law is unbiased. It only knows itself. So, someone who is lawful only sticks with the rules. But at the same time, it's dependable and it's a trustworthy system. That's why blue is used for lawful.
And here we're talking about the idealized system of law, not any particular system of law.
Yeah, it's about the comparison between not the gritty reality, just the idealized version of it.
The comparison versus chaos.
Yes, right.
Chaos.
Red is associated with chaos because of its color associations, aggression, passion, and power.
What are red's positive traits?
Strength, excitement, and stimulation.
What about negative traits?
They would be uncontrolled anger, tiring, and violence.
We had some discussion about when it comes to chaos, whether we should associate it with black or whether we should associate it with red.
Yes, I think red made a lot more sense because of the traits that we mentioned earlier, like violence, aggression, passion, power. These are all powerful, uncontrolled type of traits, which is matching of chaos, which is very independent. It does what it wants, unlike with black, which is more sleek and sophisticated.
So red is about chaos because it involves passionate, unthinking decisions.
Yes, exactly.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's negative. For example, love is also an association with red.
Yes, and passion, things like that. It's very outgoing. It has characteristics that show that it doesn't want to stay on the sidelines. It wants to be up front and center. It wants to do something.
So this is more in line with the idea of chaos as individuality rather than chaos as simple rebellion.
Yes, or even evil.
Speaking of evil.
Evil is associated with black because of these traits: power, mystery, and seriousness.
It does have positive traits though.
Yeah, like elegance, seduction, and discreet.
People would be unsurprised to hear that evil and black have negative traits.
Yeah, like for example, controlling, nothingness, and despair.
One of black's other negative traits is, in fact, evil. But one of the things that we wanted to get into was when it comes to black and white, we have seen that there's been some controversies around these.
Black is representative of the absolute, while white is representative of new beginnings.
When it comes to color psychology, the reason why we chose black is because of that absolute. And there's a reason why we didn't choose white as good, because white is seen as new, as something that is unstained, whereas good is often fighting in the mud as much as evil is.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes if you dress up your character in all white, it can also be seen as the villain dressed in white.
The other reason why we chose black is because of this. Black is absolute. And when it comes to D&D, evil is absolute. It's associated with devils, fiends, and demons.
And I think we should also take a look at the traits that we mentioned again, especially the negative ones like seductive and intimidating, things like that, right? Evil is exactly that. It seduces you into its power.
Well, it depends on the type of evil, but we'll get to that.
So should we take a look at?
Good.
Good is associated with green because of its traits, nature, serenity, and friendliness.
What is green's good traits?
Safety, health, and hope.
What about negative traits?
It would be envy, judgmental, and greed.
Aside from the positive traits that green has, both in its associations and its actual traits, is that green is the most variable of all of the colors.
Yeah, it's because of its variability that the meanings can get
varied?
Yes, exactly.
I think for a long time, D&D has shown that there is a variety of good, whereas evil is always evil, right? It always ends up being something awful and terrible. I think when it comes to D&D, good is much more varied in their approaches. Planescape, which might be a bit older now compared to the current 5e D&D, laid down some very hard and fast rules when it came to alignment. So there were planes of law, planes of good, planes of evil, and so on. But Yizgrad was chaotic good, and people would drink and fight and fornicate.
Please no bully YouTube.
And you can see how for some people, that's heaven.
Yeah, but it can also be pretty exhausting.
Okay.
Yeah, like for me, my ideal heaven would be like, oh, it's just endless nature. And, you've got farms, you live peacefully with nature, with your community, something like that.
So very little drinking and fighting?
Well, maybe some drinking, but less fighting.
What about the third thing?
Oh.
But green can also represent toxic elements, can't it? Like Shale's green.
Shale's green, exactly, because the history of that green comes from the copper arsenic wallpapers that were used in the 19th century. And that's why in current culture, you see green, well, specifically Shale's green, used in poison, things like that. So it shows a sickly, vile version of that.
Could you expand a bit on what you mean by shown?
So like in media, video games, movies, you'll see that vats of poison are all shown with that toxic Shale's green color. color.
Oh, okay.
There is a saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So you can have good intentions and produce bad outcomes. And that is why green is such a great color to express good, because there's many variable ways to see good. And you can either go really good or you could go really bad, like with Shale's green. But maybe I'm repeating myself, so let's move on to the next topic.
True neutral.
True gray rejects all colors, even the extremes of black and white, and because of this, it is seen as the color for neutrality.
For just a moment, could you explain how we see colors and why gray is truly the neutral color?
Okay, so the way we see colors is that white light is a reflection of all of the wavelengths of light. So the rainbow, essentially red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and so on. So with gray, white and black is actually the absorption or reflection of all colors. There is no singular wavelength of light that actually associates with these colors. So gray is just a partial reflection or absorption of these colors. It doesn't actually have any color in it.
However, the moment a color is given to gray or it goes lighter or darker, it changes its meanings.
Yes, so when gray starts to shift towards white, it takes on more of white's meanings. When it goes towards black, it takes on black's meanings. But if you start mixing other colors, say red or yellow or green with the gray, it changes gray's neutrality. It no longer becomes neutral.
So in essence, it's the perfect color for true neutral.
Exactly.
Exploring color theory and alignment. So we wanted to talk about for just a moment how color combinations interact. For example, taking the extremes, the lawful good character with what we've said thus far would look green and blue, and the chaotic evil would look black and red.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, with those color combinations, I can see why I would be more drawn towards the lawful good character as opposed to the chaotic evil character, because the blue and green reminds me of a meadow. It's peaceful, and he looks more approachable as compared to the black and the red. Looks like volcanic ash, essentially, and very intimidating, and I don't want to approach that.
So, for example, with the chaotic evil character being red and black, they're all about power. That's actually what chaotic evil believes in. Only power rules.
Yes, and we can also talk a little bit about the composition of colors. So if there is a little bit of red, but a lot of black, it shows that he is very much more towards evil. He's more calculating, he's more cold, but he has a little bit of that chaotic power within him that he's trying to control, which shows that extra intimidation as well.
So let's say that we wanted to change the meaning of some of these things or show a bit more about the character. How would we go about that? For example, would introducing white be good to show a newer character?
Yes, so we have to take into account the hue, saturation, and shade of a color. So adding white to perhaps green would show that this person is very new, very inexperienced. If you added black to green, it shows a little bit more of a serious vibe. It shows that they're a little bit more experienced, even though they're both green.
Rather than shading or tinting, what about introducing a new color? Like that's what I was speaking about by adding white to the design.
Again, here we need to take into account how much white you are adding to the design. If it's just a little bit of white, it shows as an accent color and the meanings don't come quite as through. But if you use it as majority color, paired it with green and blue, for example, it shows the innocence, the purity, the naivete of white. And when you pair it with the positive colors of green and blue, it shows that this character is naively good, someone with extremely pure and good intentions, innocent to the extreme.
So taking from those two statements that you've said before, you could show an inexperienced chaotic evil character by giving them perhaps vibrant red and more charcoal black instead of pure black?
Well, that's where things get a bit tricky, because with a vibrant red, it actually accentuates red's meanings. It's more powerful, aggressive, more chaotic.
So that could show that they are more inexperienced because they're more chaotic, they're more evil, right? They're more out there. And a desaturated red would show a more matured chaotic evil?
Yes, so they would have more control over their chaos.
So just to help people with their color design, vibrancy, saturation, that would usually mean more inexperienced or more intense in that particular quality.
That's right.
Okay, with everything that we've learned, what are some notes that you think people could take away when it comes to alignment and color psychology, or how to design their characters with that in mind?
Well, the first thing they've got to remember is composition. The majority color that you choose will have the most predominant meanings of that color. Saturation will intensify the meaning of that color, and tinting and shading the color will also give different feelings to that color.
If I can simplify, what you're saying is if you change a red to a burgundy, expect there to be changes in the color psychology.
Exactly.
But we have a habit you shouldn't change if you want to get your models painted.
And what's that?
Keep those brushes wet. Bye-bye. Happy Deepavali!
Yes, Deepavali is the celebration of the triumph of good over evil, if you will.
Light over darkness.
Yes, and we thought this topic would be great to celebrate this very important event to me. And we hope you have a great Festival of the Lights.